I called my son from the emergency room and he said, "Dad, I am busy." He never called back. 3 weeks later, he came smiling asking for his monthly money and I opened the door and handed him one. I have handed a lot of envelopes to a lot of people over the course of my career: customs declarations, duty assessments, seizure notices. I always said the envelope does not care how you feel about what is inside it. It just delivers the truth. Turns out that skill transfers remarkably well to parenting. Welcome to Revenge Stories. Drop a comment and make sure to subscribe. You are going to love it here. My name is Humphrey Call. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a customs and trade compliance officer in Sault Ste., Ontario. If you have never been to the Sault, it sits right on the border between Ontario and Michigan, straddling the St. Mary's River like it cannot quite decide which country it wants to belong to. I always liked that about it. I retired 2 years ago with a pension, a bad left knee, and the kind of institutional patience that comes from spending 3 decades watching people try to talk their way out of things. They clearly did. My wife Nadine says I can hear a lie before it finishes forming. I think she is being generous. I usually hear it before the person even opens their mouth. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching this from. I would genuinely love to know. Life after retirement looked pretty good from the outside and was mostly good from the inside, too, which is more than a lot of people get. Nadine and I had the house on Pym Street that we bought in 1998. The one with the screened porch she always wanted. I had my Tuesday morning coffee with my friend Roland at the Tim Hortons on Great Northern Road, same table, same order. Going on 19 years. Things were quiet. I thought quiet was the reward. Our son Brendan was 34. He had grown up in that house on Pym Street, gone to Alma University for 2 years before deciding it was not for him, and had been working on and off in equipment sales. Ever since, he lived across town in an apartment on Queen Street East that cost him $1,100 a month. And I had been helping him cover that for going on for years, not the whole rent, $500 a month. A number we landed on together when he went through a stretch of reduced hours at work. And I said I would help while he got back on his feet. The stretch had gotten quite long, feet. As far as I could tell, we're still not fully under him, but I kept sending it because he was my son and I was his father, and that is what fathers do. Or so I had told myself for 4 years. What I had been slower to admit was the arithmetic of what we actually had. Brendan came by on the first of each month. He would sit for 20 minutes, drink a coffee, say the apartment was fine, work was okay, and leave with an envelope. He did not call between visits unless he needed something. He did not ask about my knee, which he knew had been giving me trouble since the fall. He did not ask about Nadine's book club, which she had been running for 6 years and which she was very proud of. He showed up, he collected, he left. And I had trained myself to call that a relationship because the alternative was too uncomfortable to look at directly. Roland had said something to me in February that I had filed away and not touched. We were on our second coffees and he said, "Humphrey, I say this as someone who has known you since you had hair. Does Brendan actually know you? Not know of you, know you?" I told him that was a strange question. He said it was a yes or no question. Actually, I changed the subject. Roland let me. That is why we have been friends for 19 years. The chest pain started on a Tuesday evening in March the 14th. Nadine was at her sister Carol's in Sudbury for 4 days, which she did every spring. I was making pasta and I felt something that I can only describe as a pressure that had opinions, not sharp, just insistent. I sat down. It did not leave. After 20 minutes, I called 911 because 31 years of professional risk assessment does not abandon you even when you are standing in your own kitchen holding a wooden spoon. They kept me at Sault Area Hospital overnight. Not a heart attack, a cardiac arrhythmia, the kind that is manageable and not immediately dangerous, but absolutely requires attention and follow-up and a conversation with a cardiologist. I was in a hospital gown in a room by myself at 9:17 in the evening, with monitors attached to my chest, and I did what any father would do. I called my son. He picked up on the third ring. I could hear noise in the background, music, voices. He said, "Hey Dad." I said, "Brendan, I am at the hospital. They brought me in by ambulance. My heart was doing something it should not have been doing. I am okay, but I wanted you to know." There was a pause. Then he said, "Oh, wow, okay, are you all right?" I said, "I am stable, yes, they are keeping me overnight." He said, "Okay, good, Dad. I am actually in the middle of something right now. Can I call you back in a bit?" I said, "Sure." Son, he did not call back that night. He did not call the next morning. I was discharged at 11 a.m. on the 15th. I took a cab home. I made myself tea. I called Nadine and told her what had happened, and she was in her car headed back to Sault Ste. Within the hour, which is exactly who Nadine is, I did not call Brendan again. I decided I would wait and see what he did on his own. That felt like important information. He did not call that day. He did not call the following day. I called Roland on the Thursday. I told him the whole thing start to finish. He was quiet for a moment and then he said, "Do you want me to come over?" I said, "Yes." He was there in 20 minutes with a bag of butter tarts from the bakery on Queen Street because Roland has always understood that serious conversations require appropriate provisions. We sat on the screen porch and I told him what I was thinking. He listened the way he always does, which is completely without preparing his response. While you were still talking, when I finished, he said, "What does Nadine think?" I said, "She thinks I have been subsidizing a transaction and calling it a relationship." He ate a butter tart. He said, "Nadine is a very intelligent woman." I said, "I am aware." I had a follow-up cardiology appointment on the 21st. On the way home, I stopped at the office of a lawyer named Patricia Gould, who had handled our estate documents and the purchase of the Pym Street house, and who I had always found to be precise in the way that good lawyers are precise, which is to say she wasted nothing, not words, not time, not your money. I explained the situation. I told her about the $500 a month, the 4 years, the phone call from the hospital, the 3 weeks of silence. I told her Brendan would be coming to the house on the 1st of April, which was 8 days away, and that I wanted something ready for him when he arrived. Patricia looked at me over her reading glasses. She said, "So, we are terminating the financial arrangement." I said, "Yes," she said, "and you want it documented and delivered formally." I said, "I want him to understand that this is not an emotional decision, it is an assessed one." She wrote something on her legal pad and then she looked up and said, "Humphrey, I have drafted a lot of documents in this office. I do not think I have ever drafted one that was quite this specific about its reasoning." I said, "I want the date of the call in there. March 14th, 9:17 p.m. I want the duration listed for minutes, including the time it took him to tell me he was busy." She said, "I will make it very clear." I said, "I know you will." The letter outlined the termination of all monthly financial support effective April 1st. It cited the specific circumstances of March 14th as the documented basis for the decision. It noted that Humphrey's estate documents had been reviewed and revised by counsel. It was 2 pages. It was not cruel. It was not emotional. It simply said what had happened and what the consequences were, which is exactly how I had spent 31 years doing my job, and I saw no reason to abandon the methodology. Now, April 1st was a Wednesday. Brendan arrived at 11 o'clock in the morning. He knocked twice, which he had always done. I opened the door. He was smiling the way he smiled when he came on the 1st of the month, which was a particular kind of relax that I recognized now for what it was. He said, "Hey, Dad." I said, "Come in." He stepped inside. He looked around the front hall. He said, "How have you been?" I said, "I have been well." He said, "Good, good." I went to the hall table. I picked up the envelope. I held it out to him. He took it the way he always took the envelope on the 1st of the month, without looking at it first. Then he noticed it felt different, too thin. He looked down. He opened it. He read the first paragraph. Then he read it again. He looked up at me. He said, "What is this?" I said, "It is a letter from my lawyer." He said, "I can see that." He said, "Dad, what is this about?" I said, "The letter explains it." He said, "The 14th of March. His voice had shifted, something underneath it. "Now," he said, "you are doing this because of one phone call." I said, "I am doing this because of the phone call and the 3 weeks that followed it." He said, "I was going to call." I said, "Brendan, I know exactly how long 3 weeks is." He stood there. He looked at the letter again. He said, "You revised your will?" I said, "I did." He said, "Because I did not call back fast enough." I looked at him for a moment and then I said, "Son, I called you from a hospital bed with monitors on my chest, and you told me you were busy, and then I did not hear from you for 22 days. He opened his mouth. I said, "I am not asking you to explain it.